Montreal's vibrant tapestry is woven with threads from countless cultures, but few have left as profound an impact as the Irish. From the earliest settlers to the mass influx during the Great Famine of 1847, the Irish have shaped the architecture, culture, and leadership of Montreal, building the city we cherish today.
It's a long history. I think Irish immigration in Montreal can date back to before 1750. We were kind of right here at the start.
The first Irish Catholics came to Montreal in 1710. Immigration from Ireland slowly increased as conditions for Catholics in Ireland grew increasingly intolerable.
During the first famine in and around 1830, you saw more and more Irish showing up here in the city. And of course, the big influx was around 1847 during the famine that we're all very much aware of.
I'm at Pointe-Saint-Charles, just to the southeast of downtown Montreal, and today I'm paying a visit to the Irish commemorative stone, also known as the Black Rock.
Sometimes a city can be haunted by an event so tragic that it leaves dark, indelible traces in the public consciousness. Such is the case with Montreal's Black Rock, the first monument in the world dedicated to Black 47, the year tens of thousands of Irish refugees crossed the Atlantic Ocean aboard coffin ships in search of a better life.
During their journey across the Atlantic, many of these refugees contracted the deadly and contagious disease, typhus.
For the traveling Irish, the journey was nightmarish.
And it would end with Montreal's darkest hour.
The summer of 1847 in Montreal was a summer like no other one.
The Great Famine hit its peak in Ireland, prompting 100,000 new Irish immigrants to come to Quebec that year.
70,000 landed in Montreal, more than anywhere else in North America.
And Montreal was small back then, only 50,000 people.
75,000 Irish refugees descended on Montreal, a city of only 50,000 people. So you can imagine that would be like 6 million refugees arriving in our city this summer. Can you just imagine how overwhelming that would be?
There had been rumors that there were ships coming in from Grosse-Île with people who were very, very sick.
As they entered the St. Lawrence River, they approached a quarantine station that had been set up at Grosse-Île near Quebec City. The station witnessed thousands of deaths but could not contain the epidemic. The mortality rate was estimated at about 30 to 50%.
The quarantine station was unable to stop the spread of this disease despite teams of doctors. 5,000 people were buried there, but the disease did move upriver that summer to Montreal. And in the month of June, that's when the first ships began to arrive.
The ships came in Montreal Harbor in what is now Old Montreal. And as you can see, it's just a very short walk into Griffintown and into the area where the sheds were.
They started coming off the boats and they were on the shores there in what we sometimes call Pointe-Saint-Charles.
Immigrant ships arrived by the score, carrying not only Irish dreams, but also the dreaded ship fever, typhus. In Montreal, the Irish were herded off the ships and put in quarantine. Sheds were built to house the sick and the walking dead. As more ships arrived, more sheds were built, and more graves were dug.
Before long, these sheds were overcrowded centers of filth and misery with stinking corpses littering the nearby fields.
The stench apparently was so bad that at the highest part of the mountain of Westmount, you could smell the death. So you can imagine, and 6,000 people. You can imagine even in Montreal today, in our day and age, if 6,000 people suddenly died in one summer, could we even handle it?
As the death toll mounted, more trenches were dug and typhus victims were buried unceremoniously in the middle of the night.
6,000 people were buried here at this very site. There's also burial sites that most people are unaware of, one over at Wellington Basin and the other one at the entrance of the Lachine Canal. There's also bodies buried along the length of the canal.
When the disease began to appear throughout the city, an angry mob assembled on the Champ-de-Mars and threatened to throw the fever sheds and their victims into the St. Lawrence River.
Citizens by this time, by midsummer, were furious.
The citizens were starting to get upset about this because the typhus was spreading through the entire city. Now, an angry mob assembled on the Champ-de-Mars parade grounds. They decided to take action into their own hands, and they threatened to go to the site of the fever sheds at Wellington Bridge and to toss the sheds into the river along with all of the refugees to get rid of the problem once and for all. The mayor at the time, John Easton Mills, very heroic, he decided to move the site of the fever sheds from Wellington Bridge to right behind you where we now have this parking lot. 22 fever sheds were erected in total.
Mayor Mills was an amazing man. As the people were dying and immigrants continued to pour in, he saw the need for more hospital sheds to be built. The Board of Health wanted to move all of these people to an island 12 miles downstream, get them all out of the city. Instead, he ordered more hospital sheds to be built on site, and he actually went out and physically construct the buildings and visited the sick, saying that it would be monstrous to even think of moving these people in that condition.
Mayor Mills personally volunteered to care for the sick and dying immigrants and could often be seen at the midnight hour going from shed to shed, offering water and hope to patients, allowing doctors and nurses much-needed rest.
Unfortunately, he did lose his life to the very disease he was trying to save people from.
And that's why today we call him the Martyr Mayor.
Our old mayor succumbed to typhus on the 12th of November, 1847. He made the ultimate sacrifice to care for the most destitute and desperate of refugees coming here into our city. And so he's someone who, again, is not very well known in our history. He's not very well honored. And so he's someone we definitely want to pay a lot of homage and respect to as well.
His funeral was one of the most well-attended events in the history of Montreal.
Our nuns, priests, and clergy risked their lives to care for the sick and dying.
The Grey Nuns, who were located nearby in the Mother House, sprang into action to care for the sick and dying immigrants. Their first-person account can be found online at the digital archives at the National University of Ireland in Galway. The annals describe the horrors that the nuns witnessed and experienced that summer. In the horrifying stench of the ramshackle structures, they found dying patients moaning in pain and begging for water. The filthy quarters were shared by the living and the dead, with crying orphans still clinging to deceased parents.
More than 1,000 orphans were adopted by French-speaking families here in Montreal. If the children were so young they didn't know their names, many of them adopted the names of their French-speaking family. Others maintained their Irish family name, but have a preference or their first language is French.
That's why today we have city councillors like Richard, Ryan.
In the 1850s, many Quebec families adopted Irish orphans, their parents dead of ship's fever on the Atlantic crossing.
Alors Molly, voici ton nouveau père et ta nouvelle mère. Dorénavant, tu porteras le nom fier et historique de Bélanger. Tu es maintenant une petite Canadienne, Molly.
No! We have to keep our Irish name.
Monseigneur, ça me paraît tout à fait acceptable.
A century and a half later, many of those names still resound in Quebec.
In the ceiling of the entrance to Bon Secours Church in Old Montreal is a painting.
The painting is fascinating on many levels. It's beautiful, it's evocative, it's painful, and its origins lay in the fact that the Bishop of Montreal actually gave support to the sisters, and he contracted what was known as famine fever, and he was fortunate in that he survived. And so he commissioned a local artist in Montreal to create this wonderful image to depict the story of what had happened.
What we see in that painting is the three orders of nuns working in succession to care for the famine Irish.
The nuns did their best to care for the sick, but soon they too caught typhus and 7 of them died.
What makes this unique and so poignant is that you see scenes of death. And this is very unusual. In terms of 19th century art, people didn't want to depict suffering. To actually see scenes like this, it probably is the first painting of the Great Hunger in the world.
All told, approximately 6,000 Irish immigrants died from typhus.
And today are commemorated by the Black Rock.
Thousands of commuters make their way down Bridge Street on their way to Victoria Bridge. Just meters away from the bridge, a black boulder sits on the concrete divider. It marks the spot where 6,000 Irish immigrants were buried in a mass grave 160 years ago in 1847.
In the 1850s,
group of Irishmen who are working on Victoria Bridge, which is just ahead of us there, erected this monument.
When they started to build the Victoria Bridge, the workers, many who were Irish, started unearthing bones. When they started digging into the story, because it was 1859, not that long after 1847, so the story was still relatively in the modern conscious of the time, they decided to take this boulder and lay it as a headstone to the 6,000 plus Irish.
They dredged this black stone, removed it, and placed it in the burial area. And this was the beginning of the fact that it was a cemetery.
On the stone, they wanted to remember these people, and they wrote, "To preserve from desecration the remains of 6,000 emigrants who died of ship fever in 1847-48. This stone was erected by the workers employed in the construction of Victoria Bridge."
The Black Rock Monument is the oldest monument to the Great Irish Famine in the world, and it is said to be the largest Irish famine grave outside of Ireland.
In June every year, there is a commemorative walk to the Black Rock, a monument to the 6,000 buried bodies of the people who died from typhus during that time.
Every year they come, the United Irish Societies, St. Patrick's Society, the Ancient Order of Hibernians. They march to commemorate not the lives, but the deaths of their ancestors, the ancestors who fled from Ireland in the potato famine of the 1840s. They left by the thousands, the Maguires, the Kellys, the Shaughnesseys, the Hogans. Some of them came here, to Pointe-Saint-Charles.
What stands out most about this monument is the fact that it doesn't stand out at all. Most Montrealers don't even know it's here.
So the debate in the Irish community in Montreal is, should the stone be more manifestly Irish? That would signal some kind of Irish presence.
The most common suggestion in the community to solve this problem is for there to be a Celtic cross, like this one, near the stone.
We should have an Irish cross there as well. That would be a wonderful thing because that would confirm the fact that it is an Irish cemetery. The Irish cross would be a true example of we were here, we are still here.
More recently, there are high hopes that the Black Rock will finally be commemorated in a fitting and respectful manner.
The City of Montreal and Hydro-Quebec, the provincial power utility, have been working with the Irish community to design and build a memorial park to honor the contributions of the Irish people to the city.
We wanted to not only honor the Irish, but all the different peoples who came to help them in 1847 and who died helping. There was a Mohawk Nation, there were Jewish people, there was Francophones, there were British soldiers, there was John Easton Mills, the mayor himself. So many people without any reason. They didn't know any of these people. They came down and they helped wherever they could. To me, it feels a lot like the Montrealers that helped the Irish that were sick and dying in 1847 are still here helping us Irish in 2020. The Irish community is still alive and vibrant as it ever was, and to some degree even more, because 40% of the population of Quebec can claim some Irish heritage.
Except on St. Patrick's Day, when 100% of Quebecers claim Irish heritage.
Absolutely.
This is a somber piece of Montreal Irish history, but I'm glad I came to see it today, and I encourage you to do the same if you're in the area.
So I encourage you to remember this incredible story and to really provide an exceptional setting, because Montreal really is the last city in the world without a proper commemoration to the Irish, despite the fact this was the first monument ever, and it's also the largest burial ground outside of Ireland from the famine.
According to AOH President Victor Boyle, when you touch the Black Rock, it is always warm. It has a texture unlike any other stone I've ever touched. It doesn't feel like a rock. It almost feels like something is coming through it. I remember leaning against it and getting a feeling of life. It was a spooky feeling, almost like underground roots were holding up the Irish stone. The people buried there don't want to be forgotten.